Another challenge for the Green Hornet, his aide Kato, and their rolling arsenal, the Black Beauty. And now, to protect the rights and lives of decent citizens, rides the Green Hornet.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of the Hornet Sting podcast. It's the owner, publisher of the Daily Sentinel here, John S. Drew, and I'm joined, as we're going to be doing through this whole 50th anniversary of the Green Hornet, by the District Attorney himself, Mr. Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Hey, how you doing? Happy to be here.
I'm good. And, you know, this is the one you're looking forward to, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Hey, listen, are we getting any buzz yet on this podcast?
Well, there's the early buzz. I haven't had anything because we're doing these in blocks in order to save some time.
You just
I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
But I'll tell you something. The early buzz in terms of like when I started putting up notices about the fact that we're going to do this got a lot of positive likes and loves on Facebook and people saying, oh, yeah, this definitely should be a podcast. Now, hopefully they enjoy this shortened version because it's not the full-blown like we do on Batcave where we're breaking it down. But
yeah, it's not the ones where we drone on and on and on and on about every little bit of minutia. You know, but I think this suits this show. This is a get in, take care of business, and get out.
Yeah,
you know, kind of a show.
Yeah. You notice that's one thing too. There isn't a whole lot of, and maybe part of it is they don't want to go with the way of Batman. There isn't a whole lot of humor. There's some moments of quick, cute lines, but there's no real attempt to just full out humor. Even Axford, who if I remember correctly in the radio show was a bit more of a bumbler for a while there. He's played more straightforward.
If there is any sort of comedy relief character, it's Mike Axford. I mean, he's got his broad Irish, Irishness, into the whole thing. But yeah, he's not terribly bumbling, but he's also not terribly effective. Although you do sort of glow with a little pride anytime that Britt says, Mike, this is a great story.
Yeah. So,
but let's get into this one
here. It's called Program for Death, aired September 23rd, 1966. Your writers, Jerry Thomas and Louis Reed. Louis Reed actually wrote some episodes for Batman. I don't have the exact episodes, but he wrote some. Director is Larry Pierce, who's going to direct several episodes of The Green Hornet. Notable guest star, the only one that stood out for me this time, the great Gary Owens as the news anchor.
Yeah. This episode is special to me because this is the one that that was the Viewmasters reels.
Oh, okay.
That I had when I was little. So yeah, they chose this one, and I suspect that this is the first episode filmed.
Well, that sort of connects with what I saw on Wikipedia. Mind you, I always got to take everything on Wikipedia with a grain of salt, but they also said that this could very well have been the first episode.
Yeah. They have the Hornet and Kato have the clunkier first masks throughout this entire episode, and I believe it. I don't know. I'm kind of watching these as we go along. That this might be one of the only ones where they both have those masks in it. But there's so many things in this that we get for the first time. The Hornet watch.
Yeah, I want that watch.
It connects with D.A. Scanlon's glasses. Mm-hmm. That when he presses that, then his glasses buzz. So you have to think we do have the Hornet sting in this one. So if this is the first episode filmed, then that we get that also, and we also get the satellite scanner.
Yeah, the satellite. It's funny now watching it on a big screen TV. It looks kind of cheap, though.
Yeah, you know what? When it pops up, and they're testing it or whatever. But yeah, once it launches, yeah, it's on a string or it's on a wire, obviously. But I think the idea is cool. They didn't follow it through enough as far as what the Hornet sees on his monitor. It doesn't reflect what it would have looked like from a satellite looking,
Right.
looking straight down and that sort of thing. And obviously there's, budgets and what they could do, at the time with special effects. But I like the idea of it, that the Black Beauty has that device, and that they can put it to good use. But to me, there's a lot of really exciting things in this episode, and the entire plot and what goes on is elevated up above the first two, like basically gangster mobster type of adversaries that are in the first couple of episodes. I think there's so many different things that elevate that in there. You have the little device that brings the leopard to somebody to attack. You have this sort of consortium of villains, the Diamond People,
Led by a woman.
Yeah, led by a woman. Things move along very quickly through this. There's a lot of really good action, in it. I think it's higher concept than the first two episodes. Why they didn't go with this one, see, that's where I'm baffled. If this is the first episode filmed, I would have put this one out there. It's got everything. And again, it's got that little bit higher concept. The idea of of something that puts out a signal that attracts a leopard to come and attack people seems to be much more interesting than running around against a mobster or gangster who's doing an insurance scam. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if they were concerned about it. Again, they didn't want to scare people off. They wanted to be a calmer crime drama, maybe, or at least in the first few episodes, and then kind of introduce a little bit wackier stuff to people. But personally, I don't get it. I'd much rather had seen this one as the first episode. I really perked up as I was watching these when this one came on, and not just because I was familiar with it from the Viewmasters, but again, I just think it's a really good episode. I like everything that happens in it, and it's very exciting.
See, maybe though that's what the problem is. Like you said, it's a little more high concept. It could come across almost as Batman-ish, that you've got animals programmed to attack. Yeah. And maybe they were just afraid, figuring, let's go with the more straightforward gangster stories first before we bring in... Because there are going to be other episodes that have higher concept, including the very end where we're dealing with an alien invasion.
Sure. Maybe that's part of the problem of this show, if you want to call it that it's schizophrenic. Maybe they weren't sure exactly who it was that was going to be watching this show or what it could be. And that's why the shuffling around of these, first few episodes. But again, maybe it's just me loving the Batman TV series so much, and a little bit more of the higher concept type of stories, that I lean towards this one.
Right. I'll tell you one thing I did love about this episode. For once, we had an animal that looked fierce and lean and not, walking around with a gut and looking long in the tooth. Although I did find it funny that the zookeeper claimed that the cat was 18 years old. Because I'm like, that does not look like an 18-year-old cat. I mean, and it's one smart cat. Think about it. At the very end, when it's programmed to go after Axford running through the estate and such, it doesn't just simply run after and home in on the thing and then jump on top of Mike. It climbs up a tree and waits.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure that zookeeper or whatever he was talking about the actual attack cat.
Okay.
Because he's talking about an 18-year-old cat that hardly had any of its teeth and claws or anything like that. But this cat that actually attacked belongs to the lady in charge of the Diamond, consortium, and it lives on her property.
Okay.
So I think again it was one of those like mistaken cats or something like that they were someone was trying to shuffle that off as, oh, it's this guy's cat, and it couldn't have been because it's an old cat without any teeth.
Right.
I think that was just a misdirection or a mistaken type of thing, unless they would have shown that guy was part of the bad guys, but as far as I remember, they didn't. Okay. But I love all those people who are sitting around the table, especially
yes.
that one older, distinguished-looking guy with the beard and the mustache,
yes.
and I think he had a monocle or whatever. This is another one of those cases where you want to know more about these characters.
Well, you could have seen them.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you could see them actually as being recurring characters in the sense that she would send each of them out with whatever their responsibilities were to take care of the Hornet because he's horning in on something else. Yeah. It could be almost like this is the crime club, not exactly. To get into Nora Clavicle, but...
Oh, please. Although she's kind of similar. Now, I think you've honed in on another quote-unquote problem of the show, that it could have used a recurring adversary. These villains sort of tend to walk in and walk out, and they tend to somewhat be faceless. A good actor can elevate, that, but again, it would have been really interesting, even if it was, just like a kingpin type of character, to come back every once in a while. I think would have been interesting and provided a little more continuity, in the show too. But I'm not putting down this episode. I really, really like this episode.
I liked it. I don't think I liked it as much as you did. There's a couple other things too. Mike gets gassed again, even though he gets peripherally, he still gets gassed.
Yeah. Yes, he does.
And does Kato kill a man in this episode?
Remind me of what part you're...
Just after they gas the leopard and Mike, they get jumped by a couple of goons, and Kato does a side chop right to the neck of a guy who staggers back and he's choking. And I was like, did he kill him?
I don't think so. I don't get that sense. Wow, yeah, that's interesting that you call that out. No, I don't get that sense, but it does give a sense of that he could use deadly force.
Yeah.
But I think maybe at this time they wouldn't want to have done that. I think they want to keep it with heroes don't kill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's just it was so violent.
Go ahead.
It was so violent.
Yeah, very well. Like I said in the first episode, he's a savage dude.
Yeah.
You can see why the Green Hornet keeps him around. And you know what? Saying that, the Hornet himself is no slouch. In a fight.
Right.
He can handle himself. For the most part, he'll have some difficulty maybe as we go along. But he's not the guy to stand back and let Kato, take care of all the physical, fisticuffs and all of that. He can wade in, too, and take care of things. I do love it. The part that I really love in this thing is the freezer trap.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really great, with the really effective use of the Hornet sting. And again, see, we're going back to, if this is the first episode film, that really shows the effectiveness of the sting.
Yeah.
They have this brand new device, like I said, not part of it before, not part of the radio show. And, let's show what it can do, and to blast that safe, type door off of that, diamond freezer, is really, really something. And, you feel like the Hornet was really in trouble, and there's really nothing Kato could do. He runs in to help, but he realizes he's got to stand back once he hears that Hornet sting.
Right, yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to point out?
You already mentioned Gary Owens, and I think it's really interesting how that studio, the TV studio, is part of the offices. It's actually right off of Britt's office.
Talk about job pressure.
Yeah, really. He's got the window there, and he can mute the sound, and then have the curtains, come across that. Well, I like it because it shows that the Sentinel is moving forward. It's not just the newspaper of his father's day. It now has, TV broadcast to go along with it. It would have been fun to have a line from Mike Axford, some kind of grumbling about, all this, newfangled stuff. We didn't have this in your dad's day, and that sort of thing. But
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, but it's funny that it's Gary Owens, as the announcer, and I love that.
All right, then. So I think it's safe to say, based on the way you've been talking about this is a must-watch.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a must-watch for many reasons. First one film, most likely. You get to see the clunkier first mask, and you get to judge, whether or not it's effective. You and I had talked before we were taping about how it really does obscure their faces and potentially identities, but the eyes of the actors do not come through. And as we learned from Adam West, that the eyes are the key to wearing a mask on a TV show, is what you can do with your eyes, since it's obscuring at least half of your face. It gives a really different look to the Hornet. He's more detached, and colder looking. When it goes to the form-fitting mask and Van Williams's eyes really come through, it changes, to me, the whole tone of the character.
I would see. It's funny because we're like reversed. I thought the first episode was better than you thought, and this one, it's okay. It's not great though. I would put it as a can watch.
Okay.
There are things here. Well, first and foremost, the ending is very rushed. I thought the very ending, when he says, "Okay, now let's go back and round them up," I'm like thinking, you mean there'll be no more, opposition when they go back to the gangsters after they've knocked out the ones that are on the grounds and knock out the leopard? Again, I think it's funny that the leopard is so smart that it actually climbs a tree rather than just automatically going for the signal. The way, like, for instance, when Britt demonstrates the transmitter with the cat runs off in irritation and stuff.
That poor cat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember if we see that cat again, but if I was that cat, I would not stick aroron that house anymore.
Right.
So maybe Britt Reed doesn't have a cat anymore because of his cruel abuse of it.
And even just the one thing, too, this whole thing dealt with diamonds and such, and the transmitter was used because the reporter who was investigating the whole thing had learned too much, so they'd taken him out. How did the police miss the transmitter that Britt found, but they found the diamond?
Yeah, about the same size, right?
Yeah.
Well, now, granted, the transmitter was in the pack of cigarettes.
Right.
They, I don't know. They may have just been going too fast, or they were looking for bigger clues and said, "Oh, pack of cigarettes, okay, write it down." It'll go in. Maybe it'll go into the evidence bag. Who knows? But it leaves it for our hero to find.
Well, yeah,
of course, of course, but I'll give him a little bit of leeway there that it was stuck into the cigarette pack.
I mean, I agree with you. This is definitely high concept, considering the series itself and considering what we've seen so far. But to me, I think they were hanging it on that high concept and not worrying about the story as much. There's just things here that get a little clunky. There's even one scene with the lady gangster. I can't remember her name. I don't even know if they actually say her name in the episode. She actually stumbles on her line. at one point. She talks about her Far Eastern representative, and she stumbles on it, and they left it in there.
So, I miss that. I do think that she's a fascinating character.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like you said, I wish that she could have come back. I like any of the scenes in this show where the Hornet comes in as his criminal persona. There's something about that, and this is one of those things that puts the Hornet into a little bit different category of most superheroes, is that he's wanted by the police. Mm-hmm. He's not just a criminal. He's supposed to be a major criminal force in the city.
Right.
Where other criminals, are afraid of him or at least impressed, by him. And I love it. I love any scenes where he walks into a room and he starts throwing his weight around. And this whole thing about you're going to cut me in. You'll notice there's a trend. He always asks for 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a lot,
Sure.
But it always starts my mind thinking through, like, how does Britt handle this? He's got to think through everything he's saying as a criminal, because he cannot really do criminal things other than being a vigilante, obviously. But he's got to be careful. He can't really take money from other criminals unless he's going to turn around and give it to charity, or something like that.
Right.
So he's got to watch out of the things that he does and says as his Green Hornet criminal persona to make sure that it fits in well with his Green Hornet, the hero, persona.
Right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Hornet Sting podcast. Tune in next time. The Hornet is accused of a crime he didn't commit and soon discovers there's a computer that can predict when a crime wave is going to happen. Here's another high concept episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim's excited. Okay then, folks. So until next time, thanks for listening. Take care, everyone. Jim, take care.
Let's roll, Kato.